Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe and like. And please visit us at barrykibrick.com, where you'll see all the ways that you can become a patron of our mission and help us continue to build a community of seekers who quest for knowledge, information, and most importantly, wisdom.
Today on Between the Lines, the secret to great health and vitality for men and for women with my guest, Suzanne Somers. I'm Barry Kibrick, and along with Suzanne, we will examine the beauty of growing older and how men and women can regain their zest for life at any age.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
The characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of corruption.
You don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and it's the first.
Suzanne Somers first came to our attention as the star of the classic TV series Three's Company. Now she is even better known as one of the most respected and trusted names in health and fitness. Over the years, she discovered that the second half of life is even more rewarding. And with her book, The Sexy Years, Suzanne issues an inspiring call to arms and believes that the beauty of growing older is you can combine the wisdom of age with the vitality of youth. Suzanne, welcome. It is a pleasure. Now, 1 million copies already sold. So you've come on this show, 1,010,000 afterwards or something? I mean, what's the scoop? 1 million copies
I don't have to count for this month, so it could be 2 million.
But that's amazing.
Yeah, but you know why? Because there is such a hunger, a starvation would be more aptly put, for a solution to this passage, which I have to say, the medical community has let us down at this point in our lives.
Well, you know, in your introduction, actually before your introduction, Robert Greene, Dr. Greene says, you are going to be the bridge between that letdown of the medical community and what's going on.
You know why? Our doctors in our medical schools here in this country only get approximately 4 hours of instruction in the entire hormonal system. I went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and nobody knew anything at all.
But you give us an extra added bonus, and we're going to talk, and we're going to go through the book, we're going through the philosophies. The men. No book of this type that I've had yet dealt with men as they age. You specifically deal with men as they age, and unbelievably, the same sort of, what would we call it, the same sort of medicine, I guess the best way to put it, the compounding bioidentical hormones work for them as well.
Well, I'll give you an example of my husband, but through technology, you and I, and most everybody in this room today will live to be 90 and 100 years old now. And we're living longer than any human beings have ever lived, and women have really never lived through menopause to the other side, especially not to 90 and 100. There are exceptions, but as a general rule, the bulk of us. But think about it. In this century, we have sewage that works well now in this country. Our water is clean. We have antibiotics. These things keep us alive longer. Technology will keep us alive longer. And someone said to me recently, well, is replacing lost hormones natural? And I said, but is replacing a hip natural? Is heart bypass surgery natural? Is a liver transplant natural? We have chosen as a society to alter ourselves. So why, if when we lose our hormones, we women lose them over a 2-year period, 90%, it's awful. It's awful. And you men lose yours over a 10 to 12 year period, which is why they do those movies called Grumpy Old Men. Why wouldn't we, if we have the ability now and the understanding, take a blood test, see where the levels are, prepare an individualized bioidentical prescription of hormone replacement just for you, just for me, not one pill fits all, and put back what we've lost.
But it seems like politically you've just answered that question, because these bioidentical hormones cannot be patented because they are a natural product.
Bingo. Now here's the other thing. 50 years ago, women were given bioidentical hormones. To explain to your audience, but bioidentical hormones are biologically identical to the human hormones we make. They are not a drug. They're an exact replica of what we make in our own bodies. They are synthesized in a lab, and people get that confused with synthetic. Synthetic is a drug. Synthetic is like Premarin, Prempro, the drugs that the Women's Health Initiative did the study on. Synthesized in a lab means they take yam and soy and other plant extracts, synthesize them into an exact replica of what our body makes. So that's the first most important thing that everybody needs to know, that you can go to a compound pharmacy and you can get bioidentical hormones in pre-prescribed amounts. It's not as good as going to an endocrinologist who understands it, who will take your blood test and tweak and get exactly down to like a diabetic, where a diabetic can get it down to exactly how many cc's of insulin they need every day. And 50 years ago, they were giving women bioidentical hormones for the short-term effects of menopause, night sweats, hot flashes, sleeplessness, et cetera. And the pharmaceutical companies came along 50 years ago. And by the way, I have nothing against pharmaceuticals. I have had cancer. You need the drugs when you need the drugs. But if you don't need to take a drug, I always prefer not to, because every drug has a consequence. So the pharmaceutical companies came along 50 years ago and said, hey, around the year 2000, all these women are going to be in menopause. What a big market. I don't blame them. I'm a businesswoman, I understand. So they took the essence of bioidentical hormones, pharmaceuticalized it into a drug, patented into a one-pill-fits-all, and that became the standard of care for all women for the last 50 years, and it doesn't work. And we have been harmed by it. We are dying, some of us, from it.
You know, I want to also, as we're talking about this, I want to let the viewers know that at the end of the show, I'm going to be putting up a couple of numbers, your website, as well as a website and phone number, as well as even my own website. If they need to find out more about these pharmaceutical compounding pharmacies, I want to make sure they get it. So, guys, get your pens and pencils. Men too, okay?
And hold on to your hat, because there is. Think of how many baby boomers there are right now. Every single one of us, men and women, are experiencing hormonal loss to some degree. And we don't know what to do about it. We just don't feel well. And people say, well, what does not feeling well feel like? Because it's not like you've got the flu. It's worse than the flu.
Well, you say in the book, one of the opening pages is growing older is not for sissies.
It's not for sissies.
You've got to be tough as you go through this passage.
And if I said to you, you're 50 years old and you're feeling great, and your brain is sharp and your heart is pumping and got a lot of energy, you got sexual prowess, you got vitality, you feel great, right? Got your wisdom, your business is pretty much together, you got your house almost paid for, you raised the kids, now you get to have your life. Oops, starting tomorrow, Mr. 50-year-old man, you're probably not going to sleep anymore, because there's no hormones anymore regulating your body temperature. So you're not going to sleep because you're going to be so hot, like you had a fever of 106, and sweating like you have a fever of 106. And just about what you get up, you dry off, you change, you do everything, you get back into bed, and you just start getting back to sleep. The hot comes again. This goes on all night, all day, Mr. 50-year-old man. Okay, on top of that, you're going to be sweating all the time, embarrassing sweats that are unexplainable. You'll be in a meeting and all of a sudden you're just dripping, sweat just dripping off of you. You are going to be crying a lot because you're so tired. You're going to be bitchy because your chemicals are off and you're so tired. You're going to be bloated. You're not going to be able to button your pants because for some reason, you don't understand why, your stomach is bloated like you're pregnant. And, your ankles will be swollen and sore, and your wrists will be swollen and sore. And if you had breasts, they'd be too sore to touch. They're swollen. Everything on you is swollen. You're not going to be able to remember anything because now estrogen's draining out of you, and that's the food, the fuel to your brain. So that's where forgetful comes in. And you're going to lose your sex drive. If I said that to you or to any men, they'd say, no way. And we women have been asked to essentially tough it out. And
well, you
it's
know,
not fair.
You do the funniest thing. In all your opening chapters, you have these little quotes. One of them it is, I'm out of my estrogen and I've got a gun. And I think if men went through this, we'd have a much more violent society.
You would. It makes perfect sense to me. And when you are draining out of estrogen, a gun sounds like a really good idea.
Wow.
Now, here's where the letdown has happened. Because our doctors don't know anything, and because our doctors are fed most of their information from pharmaceutical companies, which I have no problem with, and I have no problem with Western doctors. I love my doctors. But they don't know what to do for us, so they have been giving us these synthetic hormones, which, imagine giving a diabetic, here's your insulin pill. We all know that every diabetic has to be individualized, and they have blood tests they do every day. They call them prick tests, where they have to see where their blood levels, sugar levels are, and then they adjust their insulin to match that level. And that's really how menopausal women have to be treated, as though we were diabetics. And in a way we are, because one of the first things that gets thrown out of whack when your hormone drain starts is that your insulin level goes out of whack. That is why women my age gain so much weight. And they usually gain weight and they're not eating. They're not eating as much as they used to because they're so upset about the fact that they're gaining weight. So now women are afraid to eat. If you go out to a woman for lunch at any time, they'll all order salads because every woman is afraid to eat, because at this passage, that meal that you used to have in your 20s will now put 5 pounds on you. And you don't know why. It's because when one hormone's off, they're all off. It's like dominoes. You tip the first one, they all go off. So what has had to happen, a doctor should have written this book, but nobody did. I am so privileged to bring this information. I worked so hard to find this because I needed it so badly myself. I call it the 7 dwarves of menopause. Itchy, bitchy, sleepy, sweaty, bloated, forgetful, and all dried up. Oh. And I had all of them. And the quality of my life, I went from being really happy. I've done a lot of work in my life to correct what was broken about me. I've had a lot of therapy, and when I gained weight, I really learned about the insulin connection and how to balance my hormones while I was still making them through the foods that I ate. And I've undone the damage of my childhood by really dealing with it. I really worked hard at it. And all of a sudden, my life is good. I love my husband. My children are raised. I own my house. I enjoy my career. And bam, this big fist came out. And my quality of life was gone, I thought, forever.
You know what you do, you struck a chord just then. What you do in this book, besides all this information in regards to the bioidentical hormones for men and for women, you have bits of philosophy that run through it, and you just hit on that one. And it's wisdom leaves the girl behind, and the woman who emerges is much more attractive. That's the essence of why this is written, is to leave that girl behind and emerge with this attractive womanhood that seems to be able to, well, you're living proof. It gives you this, and I want to be very, I think this is important. You know, everyone is looking at Suzanne Somers, and obviously you are a successful, attractive, beautiful woman, but you get a sense of the struggle that you had to still deal with here, and yet still came out with that wisdom.
And this is a blissful passage. There's a sense of confidence that as a female, I never had before. A sense of feeling that I deserve the little space that I occupy on this planet. I have a purpose for being here.
You use the term comfortable in your skin.
Comfortable in your skin. But if my hormones weren't balanced, none of the self that I enjoy being would be present. It is impossible when you're fighting those 7 dwarves. Now here, you asked me about men. My husband, who's 10 years older than I am, is I admire him so much. I respect him so much. He's got a brilliant mind. He's a visionary, and he's been one of my greatest teachers. And he's always had a lot of energy and vitality and a sexuality about him, and an eagerness for each day. He used to jump out of bed. And a couple of years ago, I noticed that it just wasn't the same. He's sleeping during the day, naps in the morning, naps in the afternoon, naps before dinner, after dinner, then he'd go to bed and didn't want to get dressed up and didn't want to go anywhere and wasn't in the mood for anything, kind of grumpy and just not the guy that I was used to being with. And I said, I'm watching you fade before me. I said, perhaps you ought to go see my doctor. You see what this has done for me, because I've been on bioidentical hormones for 7 years. So he went to my doctor. She took his blood test. Indeed, his testosterone was very low. His DHEA was very low. She prescribed a bioidentical hormone prescription just for him to put back what he'd lost in the aging process. Now, one of the things that he had been saying was, I don't know what it is. I work out every day and my muscles seem to be shrinking. And of course, because he had no testosterone. When she put it back, suddenly he was taking 2 steps at a time, bounding out of bed in the morning. I could hear his voice booming through the house. He was at our business meetings. He was full of the old guy and what we got to do, and this is what we're going to do for the business. And sexually, I mean, I sometimes want to take that patch off of him, you know. But what a great thing it's done for him. And his muscles have come back. The paunch he was getting around the middle has now gone down to its normal size, because every hormone in him is in balance. And all men can have this. And so many women complain of their husbands who are, you know, have become couch potatoes and not interested in anything. So this is new, and this is so exciting, and you're not going to get it from your doctor, which is the problem.
The balance word, you
Yes.
emphasize it over and over in the book. Balance,
Yes.
balance, balance.
Yes.
Not only in regards to the hormones, but balance even in life. You say it as you're getting older. You've got to strive for that balance of
Yes.
happiness, that balance of serving. Those balances really play an important role. I think it actually plays an important role throughout life, even at a very young age. But it seems to come to the forefront as we age, the issue of balance.
When you say someone's out of whack, what you're really saying is someone's out of balance. From a science point of view, it's an environment of balanced hormones that prevents disease. Everyone should remember that. So that if your insulin's out of whack, you're going to end up, you know, having some of the, or all of the manifestations of elevated insulin or insulin resistance. If any of your hormones are out of balance, you're leaving yourself open for disease. Now, why don't young people get the diseases that older people get? The reason is young people make a full complement of hormones, and as we get older and the drain of our hormones falls out of us, in essence, disease, if you looked at a graph, disease is commensurate with the amount of hormones that we lose. So we've always just expected that old age brings with it diseases. You know, you get old and you're going to have high blood pressure or stroke or diabetes or type 2 diabetes or one of the cancers. We just all kind of accept that. I wonder what one, I hope I don't get anything, but I wonder what one I will get. I now realize that disease doesn't accompany old age. If you keep your hormones balanced, that is your best defense.
For women, though, this was kind of an interesting thing. When you keep those hormones balanced, you're actually going through your period even when you're 80 years old.
Yes.
You have a woman here going through that. And I don't know, now that's balanced almost to the nth degree. What is that about? How does that feel? That's taking, if we really as a society know now that we have this additional lifespan, we have to adjust this second period of our life. That's one of the adjustments, though, that you'll also have to take into consideration.
And here's where it gets tough. Because our doctors who are starting to dabble in this, unless they've chosen to make this their specialty, they're trying, they're guessing. So even with bioidenticals, there's some guessing going on. And Some doctors are choosing to put women on bioidenticals and not give them a period. But here's what happens when you don't have a period. And I think the 83-year-old that's getting her period is so inspiring. Eve is her name in there. When you're pregnant, our bodies make high levels of estrogen and higher levels of progesterone. What that does, that's a high insulin state. But when we're pregnant, we're young, and our bodies can handle being in a high insulin state, and it's only for 9 months. But during that high insulin state, your wrists swell, your ankles swell, your breasts swell, your whole body's in kind of a swollen state. And you see pregnant women near the end of their pregnancy, their ankles are swollen, they get rid of the high heels, and everything kind of hurts because you're all just so swollen with water. So when a doctor, even with bioidenticals, gives a woman her hormones in a way that she doesn't get a period, it is telling the body it's pregnant. So the woman doesn't get a period, but now your estrogen level is high, but your progesterone is even higher. Pregnancy is not a healthy state, but young women can handle it because we're at our youngest, we're at our healthiest when we're youngest, and that's usually when we're pregnant. But you put a 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old woman in a state of pregnancy for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it's very, very clear that down the road they're going to have type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke, etc. So when I talked to Dr. Schwarzbein about why do I have to have a period, she said, because what we are trying to do is mimic normal physiology. She said, if we don't mimic normal physiology, then we put our bodies in a pregnancy state, and that's very dangerous over a long period of time. She said, so normal physiology is a woman 10 days out of the month, her body manufactures progesterone, and then she gets a period. And that's what this way of doing it is. Now, a lot of women right now, I can feel, watching will say, it's not for me. And I say, it's a choice. It's a choice. But if you don't want to have your period, then you're going to have to accept that there's going to be a drain on your brain. You're going to be hormonally imbalanced. You're going to be in better shape on bioidenticals. But if you really want to do this right, then you've got to have a period. And that's why I interviewed that 70-year-old and that 80-year-old, both who are having their periods. The 83-year-old was so inspiring to me. I said, what's your typical day like? And she said, well, let me tell you where I came from. She said, 20 years ago, I'm sitting in a hospital, lying in a hospital, with such advanced osteoporosis, I thought I'd never walk again. She said, I heard about this endocrinologist, this young woman in town. I thought, what do I have to lose? I'm a broken down mess right now. I'm going to go see her. That doctor put her on bioidentical hormone replacement at that time. She's now been on for 20 years. She's now 83. I said, what's your typical day like? She said, well, I get up at 7:30 and make my bed, because at my age, it's easy to fall in love with your bed. She said, and I always make my bed dancing to either Roy Orbison or the Beatles. She said, then I have my breakfast, then I go to one of my classes. She said, I have to drive all my friends to class because none of them can remember anything. All of them hurt and ache and they're forgetful. And she said, they're just not with it. And she said, I get impatient with them because they're not with it. And I said, but two things. Do you have a sex drive? And she said, I do. I said, at 83? She said, I do. I'm not having sex. She said, because I carried a torch for my husband for so long. She said, but if the right guy came along, she said, I can be in the mood for love. I said, wow, that's incredible. And I said, what about having your period? She said, it goes with the territory. So what? She said, it keeps me in touch with my youth. She said, it's a little inconvenience, a couple of days a month. And as a result of that little inconvenience, she said, I have my brain and I have my heart and I have my faculties.
You know, it's so funny. As I said, there's also this philosophy you weave in. That also strikes another one of them, because you say maturity is remembering the fact that all along we have been trying to get back to where we started. And
right.
I can't help but think that's what's happening to
exactly.
that 83-year-old woman. Here she was at 20 years earlier at 63. She's now getting back to where she was maybe at 23. I mean, obviously at 83, you're not like a 23-year-old, but nonetheless, that's the goal. She's striving to
yes.
get back that vitality.
It's the juice of youth. It's the fountain of youth.
You know, Suzanne, at this moment, before we run out of time, because you're I know you're whetting everyone's appetite here.
So passionate about
What I
it.
want to do is I want to be able to give some, I guess, ways of people to find out more information.
Okay.
First thing I want to do is tell them about your website,
Yes.
www.suzannesomers.com.
Thank you,
There's, you can lead them almost anywhere through that website if they get in touch
and
with
also
you.
on that website, there's a chat room of women who they get together night and day, women who are going through hormonal replacement. They all share with one another. There is power in sharing information. And because we can't get this from our doctors, it's important that women share with one another what they're doing and how they're feeling.
I want to also give them another website, the one that you have, by the way, in the book itself. There's tremendous resources in the book, phone numbers, websites, addresses, you name it. But there was one that was keyed in there, and that was the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And they can be reached at www.worldhealth.net. That's www.worldhealth.net. Their phone number, 773-528-4333. That's 773-528-4333. And as always, at the end of the show, you'll have my email address there at barrykibrick@aol.com. And please, I've got a lot of this information. If you need it, I'd be happy to supply it to you as well. And I bring that up, Suzanne, because that goes back again full circle to the purpose of this, your passion. And as you say in the book, part of that passion is also what keeps you going, keeps you young. It's not just hormonal. And in fact, in the book, you go through all the different regimens that bring vitality to the individual as that vitality seems to be waning.
If you eat properly, if you understand food, if you understand the effects of food, if you understand the effects of sugar on your system and how eliminating sugar balances your hormones, if you do that in conjunction with replacing lost hormones, that is what I call optimum living.
Well, Suzanne, you have helped so many, at least 1 million we know for so far, and hopefully 1,000,010 when we're done. We have to end our time, and I want to do it with the way, I guess you say it so beautifully in the book. The only goal is to do the right thing for yourself. It is hard work, and it will require focus, but what graceful work it is. Thank you, Suzanne, for gracing our stage.
Thank you
for doing all of this work.
Thank you. Thank you for doing all your research. I appreciate that so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thank you for joining us today. And before Suzanne leaves, I'd like to leave you with these words from the sexy years. This is your time to soar, not those angstful years of youth. The world is yours. You are at the top of your game. You have wisdom and perspective. Use it well and pass it on to the next generation. I'm Barry Kibrick. Use that wisdom and perspective to read between the lines, and you will remain forever at the top of your game. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.